Barry, please introduce yourself and the group, and please take it away.
Thank you very much, Eric, and welcome everybody. I am Barry Stewart Mann. I'm located, as you can see, in Atlanta, in the state of Georgia, in the southeastern United States. It's morning here. That's great. We are going to move on. So thank you very much, Gail. Let's give her just another round of applause. That was terrific. And our next teller comes to us from right there in Chennai. And it's Shan Shanmugasundaram. He works in the fields of training, mentoring, coaching, content development, graphic design, mind mapping, and video production. He conducts training programs in schools, colleges, institutions, and other organizations. He has trained more than 10,000 students in hundreds of schools and colleges across southern India. And naturally, in all of these endeavors, Shan enlists stories and storytelling to help his students and clients to grow, learn, and transform. So here is Shan. Go ahead, Shan.
Thank you, Barry. We are traveling 2,500 years back. I'm taking you all to ancient Greek, to a palace. The king and the queen were watching and enjoying the son, the prince, playing around happily with other children. Suddenly, their son, the prince, collapsed and made twisting and squirming movements with the pain, as if a storm breathing inside his head and white froth coming out of his mouth. The king and the queen were shocked and perplexed. They summoned the physician and the spiritual leader to attend the boy. And the spiritual leader attended the boy, and he pronounced, "It was the evil spirit. We were admonished." And he asked the permission from the king to perform the ritual. And the spiritual leader started doing like slitting the goat's throat and offering the blood to the spirit. The idea was spiritual appeasement to the evil spirit. Well, at the same period of time, one man stood against all these ritual practices. That man was Hippocrates. He called that incident that whatever happened to that boy was to do with the brain and not with the spirit. So in the modern day, today we call that boy's incident an epileptic seizure. So it was Hippocrates who declared the brain as the seed of the consciousness. So this story indicates how we have been evolved from rituals to reality. And now I come back to my personal story. One unfortunate thing happened in my childhood days that really opened my eyes to the reality of life. You can hear it now. When I was around 4 years of age, I had one sister aged 1.5 years old. We were very happily, we were playing around, very, very happy. I was enjoying the company of my very little sister. Then one day she suddenly got high fever. And they pronounced she got chicken pox. I remember that time my entire house turned upside down. My sister was kept in an isolation in a separate room. The family members, including me, were forbidden to go near to that room. And local healers, the sadhus, the Swamijis and all that, started coming to my house, and they confirmed that this is Ammai in Tamil for chickenpox, meaning both the poxes and the divine mother goddess. In Tamil, it's called Mariammai. So they said, Mariamma had arrived in my sister's body in the form of chickenpox. So according to them, it was considered a sacred disease. My parents never sought the help of a medical assistant or a physician to cure the poxes. Instead, a vow of obligation is taken in the name of the goddess Mariamma to persuade the goddess to descend from her body at the earliest time. For instance, the local healers of that affliction insist that the goddess visits the house in the form of Ammai to thwart that evil of a tragedy or something which might otherwise, could have happened in my family. So Ammai does not come without a reason. So based on that Swamiji's and healers' advice, her room was sprinkled with turmeric mixed water and placed a room full of neem leaves and other herbal leaves and all that. And my mother and our closest relatives started wearing only yellow saris. Every day puja was conducted. Several songs of the goddess in various genres, like to please the goddess, lullaby and unjal, the swings, and description of the god, to extol the goddess for this power. So my sister, after suffering from poxes for 21 days, my sister never recovered. Sadly, she succumbed to the disease on the 22nd day. It was the saddest day for my life and for my family also. No one came to help us at the time. The medical authorities or the government authorities or the helpers, none of those people came near to my sister's body to take her to the cremation. So sadly, only my father was the only person in a cloth, in a bundle of cloth, she had been carried by my father to the cemetery. So it was according to my father, he was the guy with the very courageous but at the same time, he had to do for his own daughter. So for 1 year, almost 1 year, I remember, none of my relatives or friends, even the neighbors, never stepped into our house. They shocked and confused me at my very tender age. At that time, the question on my mind was, why did the goddess Mariamma not save my sister, despite all the rituals and offerings to her? I still wonder, even today, I wonder about the fact that my sister suffered from pox because of people's belief that an angry goddess caused the disease. So in Tamil Nadu, the religious experience of pox affliction as a foregrounded in the songs and narratives, temple festivals, and healing practices, all invoking the goddess in her manifestations as a pox-afflicted body and as a like a superhuman powers. So only in the late 1970s, I remember, I think 1978 or 79, the WHO, World Health Organization, declared that the pox and other pox-related diseases totally eradicated in India, thanks to the vaccination drive. We were able to do this. So I remember that time, all the children, the newborn child, after a few days or something, maybe a few months or something, they had undergone compulsorily the vaccination. So we were able to, in India, we were able to achieve that because of the compulsion of the vaccination. So today we are totally free from that boxes. Thanks to the modern medicine and the advances in the medical treatment. Today, I am certain that we will be able to eradicate the recent COVID-19, the Omicron, and other new viruses which might spring up. We'll be able to solve. So, dear audience, from this story, you can see very clearly, that why I started believing in reality, because of my personal experience and the loss of my dear sister. So do you believe that our ancient rituals still play a role in our daily lives? I would love to hear from you. Next, we should think about where and how rituals help us to grow as humans. So meanwhile, we have made a tremendous progress in medical science, you all know. Medical technology, the advancement in the medical field, which have helped humanity survive and thrive in this turbulent and disaster-prone world. I want the audience to take a moment to reflect. I'm sure that you are maybe you may have your own experience, might provide that answer to rituals to reality. Thank you very much. So I welcome any questions.
Thank you very much, Shan. That was terrific and very touching, and a lot to think about. And we can all kind of see the relevance to the situation that we live in now. I just want to point out that Shan, I dropped your website into the chat, but we'd love to open it up. Shan said if anyone had other experiences like this, I don't know if we all need to maybe make offerings to Marianma to end the COVID devastation. But please feel free to unmute yourself and just jump in.
Yeah.
I think it was very heartfelt what you shared, and because of that, knowing what's going on now, I mean, you see how people get caught up in ritual, right? People get caught up in beliefs, and you sharing that gives me more empathy for the people out there, even though I can't fathom, I just can't fathom, if something were available, why you wouldn't go out and try anything, right? Like, okay, you try this, it's not working. Okay, but they're mentioning this, maybe this might work. That's where the reasoning for me comes in, is that I understand that people need whatever they need to survive, right? To get through their life and whatever. But the loss of life seemed to be very poignant, and it was a very impacting way of sharing, especially as Barry said, at this time when so many could be saved and belief is getting in the way of that. So thank you.
Thank you, Judy, ma'am. Can
I say something?
Yes, please.
Yes. I recently happened to write an article on the history of vaccination. And so like Shan mentioned, people thought it was the wrath of Mariamma or Sitala Devi, it's a different aspect of the female goddess. And when vaccination for smallpox came to India, the vaccinators were actually physically assaulted, because the people were scared that they were, trying to do something very unethical and against religion. Because before vaccination, there was variolation, where they used to inoculate people with the fluid from people who've actually had smallpox. So they were very suspicious about vaccination. So there has been this anti-vax thing has been there all through. So we've seen it for measles also in the US. I think there was that lobby who didn't want any measles vaccine. There was a recent outbreak sometime before COVID struck. And even for COVID, there's been considerable resistance. But now people have learned that, it is better to be vaccinated. But as he mentioned, many of the rituals had a scientific basis in them. For instance, if there was somebody in a house with smallpox, they would hang out neem leaves just outside the house. So it was a way of telling people that there is somebody who's afflicted. And also the neem had antibacterial properties. So there are a lot of, and they used a lot of turmeric. The bath would be with turmeric and neem leaves boiled, because these were all antibacterial in nature. So I think some of those things, just like we sport a mask nowadays, the neem leaves was a warning sign, and no relatives would visit. They wouldn't cook certain foods by heating oils. So a lot of that, there's a lot of science behind these rituals. I think we tend to rubbish them because we don't understand the meaning and significance.
Thank you, Suman.
And before we move on, is there anyone else who would like to add in a thought or a comment? Yes, Bud?
Yeah. So I was also, remembering what happened to my sister, and she had these behavioral issues. Suddenly it was something which happened very long time after she was married, and her 2 kids were big and everything. And she had some behavioral issues, and immediately the family went into, asking some people from Kerala to come over and do some rituals and all kinds of, pujas and things like that, thinking that she's been possessed by something and that has to be exorted and things like that. But nothing happened really after that, and it was getting worse. So it was just that we, after a little bit of medical intervention, we found that she had, kind of developed schizophrenia. So that was the problem. So once she was treated for that, and she was given the right medication, and she's now perfectly all right. She's awesome. She's her old self, and she's really good. But she's on medications right through her life. But then that's okay. She's doing very well. So this is another thing which is very common, where any kind of a behavioral changes and things like that, they say they're possessed and they have somebody coming and driving it away, and all kinds of, rituals and pujas and things like that. Call the best. If you're a rich person, you call people who are really, those people who really exhaust them very well. They pay them so exorbitantly and things like that. But most of it, these are people who are suffering from some kind of a mental instability during that particular time. So that can be cured, and that was my experience. I related to when he said that about his sister. I kind of thought about this.
Thank you very much, Meena. And I see, Bud, you had your hand up. If you want to add a quick comment, please do.
Sure. Yeah, thank you, Barry, and thank you, Shan, for sharing that really challenging part of your life. And I'm sorry for the loss of your beloved sister. I think of the ancient rituals and understandings and of course, India has this tradition that goes so far back, as a way that people were able to come to grips or understanding or some kind of knowledge of the mysteries of the world and the universe. And I think that there's a difference between understanding and belief. And I think that there's something about belief and ritual that is brought to us by, say, the priestly class, can be a little bit ossified or crystallized. And so I like the pursuit of understanding, and that's the ancient stories provide the ability to penetrate and to understand some of the mysteries. And that's why storytelling is so important, is so that we can continue to peer in and try and understand these mysteries. And of course, science is pursuing the same path of trying to understand the mysteries. And so they're not mutually exclusive. And I think that's really important. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bud. I was thinking the same thing as you were speaking, that it's not an either or, and that's one of the things we reconcile.